One sunny morning, Elise, Sonia, and Cécile set off on a road trip to southern France. While driving, the driver answers a call from her daughter, Nina, and promises to be home in 3 weeks. After the call, Sonia nervously suggests that the driver shouldn't use earphones while driving, but Elise tells her to relax because they're on vacation. Cécile reminds them they need to pack up the vacation home first because the buyers are coming for a second visit. Soon after, Sonia mentions she's going to Ibiza in a few days because Pascal asked her to come. Her friends are surprised and disappointed, but Sonia explains that Pascal is finally leaving his wife to be with her. Just then, the car behind them flashes its headlights, signaling for Elise to move aside. Irritated, she tells Sonia to take over driving and jokingly suggests flashing the other driver. But before they can do that, they hear police sirens and realize they need to pull over. In the taxi, Elise is shocked that her license was taken, but Cécile reassures her that she can retake the test in 6 months. Back at the vacation home, Cécile sadly mentions how the house still smells like her late husband. To their surprise, they find a pelican in one of the bedrooms, and the curtains suggest it must have flown in through the window. The next day, they divide the tasks of clearing each room and packing. While the others pack, Sonia is busy texting Pascal. Not knowing how to handle the pelican, they leave it on the bed and continue working. One evening, Elise tells Cécile she created a profile on a dating app because she feels ready to meet someone. Even though Cécile wants to finish packing quickly, her friends suggest they take a break and go sailing the next day. The next morning, Elise and Sonia have fun riding jet skis in the water. They soon pass a children's sailing class with Paul and Julien as the instructors. To get their attention, the men push one of the students into the water and pretend he's drowning. Paul then loudly calls for help, takes off his shirt, and jumps in to save the child. Concerned, the women ride over on their jet skis and ask if everything is okay. Paul blames them for the incident and flirts with them, offering to teach them how to drive properly. The women politely refuse and head back to Cécile's sailboat. On the beach, Cécile sees her old friend Christine. Though she thinks Christine is nice, she doesn't want to talk to her because she knows she'll bring up her late husband. Just then, they spot Thomas jogging. Cécile calls him over and introduces him to the group. She reminds him they're going to the club together later that night to talk about the wedding. That evening, Cécile stays home, crying in bed, while her friends wait outside the club. The hostess, Louise, refuses to let them in, subtly suggesting they are too old. Just as they're about to leave, they run into Paul, Julien, and their friend, Marcus. The men explain to Louise that the women are with them and should be allowed inside. Louise then grabs Julien, suggesting they meet up after her shift. He responds indifferently, saying he'll think about it. Inside the club, the women offer to buy drinks, but they mention how expensive the options are. On the dance floor, Louise expresses disbelief that the men are still with the older women and tries to intimidate them. After she walks away, Sonia asks Julien if Louise is his girlfriend. He tells her they hooked up once at a party, but now she won't leave him alone. Later that night, Paul suggests going to the after-party, but the women think it's better to go home. Suddenly, he grabs Elise and kisses her. His friends tell him that if they want to leave, they can. When they get back to the house, they find Cécile asleep on the floor, surrounded by jigsaw puzzles. The next day, Paul and Julien watch the group play volleyball with Thomas on the beach. Thomas tells them he's been separated from his ex-wife for 3 years and has a 6-year-old son. Back at the house, Thomas tells Cécile that if the buyers change their mind, he might be interested in buying the house. A little later, Paul, Julien, and Marcus stop by. They mention that Sonia and Elise asked if they gave them their address last night. Cécile recognizes Marcus, an old family friend, and says he's all grown up. The men explain they were invited over for dinner the previous night. The group meets Thomas and mentions that his son takes their sailing lessons. Thomas makes a slight rude comment about their jobs. When the men bring out the drinks they brought, the older man makes a sarcastic remark about them growing out of their partying phase once they start making more money. Elise steps in, walks him out, and tells him she doesn't like his attitude. In the kitchen, Cécile says it feels strange having Marcus there since he used to babysit her kids, but Elise insists she doesn't remember inviting them over. At dinner, Julian mentions he's in law school. Marcus says he's studying engineering, and Paul says he's taking a break before his second year of medical school. Overwhelmed by their crude jokes about dating the women, Cecile gets up and walks inside the house. In the kitchen, she leaves a voicemail for her kids when Marcus walks in. He mentions it's strange being in the house and wonders if he would even recognize the children after all this time. Cecile agrees they've grown a lot, just like he has. Meanwhile, in the living room, Sonia and Elise dance with Paul, teasing him when he doesn't know an old song. Outside, Cecile shows Marcus a wall in the backyard she's always wanted to tear down to create a direct path to the garden. Meanwhile, Sonia and Julian sit awkwardly on the couch, watching the others dance and flirt. Sonia pulls out her phone and shows Julian a music artist she's managing. She notices a woman's name tattooed on his wrist and asks if it's an ex-girlfriend. He explains it's his mother's name and jokes that she must be jealous. Suddenly, Sonia gets a voice message from Pascal and goes to the terrace to listen. A few moments later, she asks Julian and Cecile to translate the message. Julian says it's a crude comment he probably sent by mistake while with another woman. Sonia gets upset, and Cecile, furious with how Pascal treats her friend, suggests they go out for ice cream. Later, Cecile breaks the lock on a freezer by the road and steals a tub of ice cream, which cheers everyone up. Since Julian feels sick, the men decide to call it a night, while the women head to the beach for a swim. When they return to the car, they find the trunk is stuck, and they can't get their clothes or keys. The women climb into the car through the sunroof and use random items to cover themselves until help arrives the next morning. The next day, Thomas, while jogging, sees the car and offers to help. As he tries to open the trunk, he apologizes for his rude behavior the night before, but says he has no patience for immature people. Elise replies that he always links maturity with age and social class, and that Paul and his friends are more respectful than him. Later, Sonia helps Elise take some pictures to send to Paul. Just then, a distressed Cecile enters and says she lost her late husband's bracelet the night before. After searching the house with no luck, she blames Elise for inviting the men over and Sonia for her affair with Pascal. She tells them she wants them to leave since it seems like they only came to meet men. In the living room, the women quietly continue packing. Elise says she'll go upstairs to pack her bag, but Cecile apologizes and says she didn't mean what she said earlier. She tells them she wants them to stay. While Cecile and Sonia share a hug to make up, Elise receives a message from Paul and decides to take a shower. That night, she leaves the house to meet him, and they spend time together. The next day, Paul tells his friends about being with Elise, mentioning that it wasn't much different from being with someone their age. He then tells Julian that they should make a move on Sonia before it's too late. At a beach bar, Christine joins the group, and the owner, Michelle, mentions they ran out of ice cream because someone broke the freezer the other night. He also says he found a bracelet in the freezer and thinks it belongs to the person who caused the damage. The group stays quiet while Michelle says he plans to sell the bracelet to fix his equipment, which upsets Cecile. Later, Julian buys tickets for the women, and Sonia gives him a kiss on the cheek to thank him. Suddenly, Louise and her friend challenge Sonia to a horse race, and she accepts. During the race, Louise tries to kick Sonia, but Sonia knocks her off her horse in response. In the end, the three women win, and Marcus cheers loudly for Cecile. When they reach the parking lot, they realize the car is missing. Sonia says Elise and Paul left for the house 10 minutes ago, so the rest of the group goes to the men's apartment. Marcus apologizes, saying he would have invited them to his parents' place, but it's rented out. As it gets late, the women say their goodbyes, and Sonia mentions she's heading to Spain the next day. To Julian's surprise, he tries to kiss Sonia, but she awkwardly pulls away. Meanwhile, Paul and Elise play a game of Yes Master in the bedroom before spending more time together. When they return to the house, Cecile scolds Elise for doing whatever Pascal tells her. Elise asks her not to be too harsh. They hear the couple upstairs, and Cecile decides to stay downstairs. While Sonia is packing, Julian appears on the balcony to say goodbye. She gets a message from Pascal about their canceled trip, which upsets her. Julian comforts her, and they spend time together, but he stops, apologizing for already taking care of things. He asks if she wants him to leave, but she says to stay, and they cuddle. Meanwhile, Cecile's daughter calls, saying her son might be expelled over a counselor issue. Drunk, Cecile insists it's not a problem. The next day, Julian answers Pascal's call by accident. Sonia isn't upset and is happy Pascal knows she was with someone else. Later, Paul jokingly recounts the events. At the beach, Cecile asks her friends if they find it strange that they're with much younger men. Elise says it's unfair that no one judges men who date younger women. Sonia admits she's still upset by Pascal's message, and her friends warn her not to engage with him again. Later, Elise and Sonia have fun swimming with their partners. Marcus joins Cecile on the beach, and when their legs touch, she moves away, finding it strange that her friends are with the sailing instructors. Marcus reassures her that nothing is happening between them, and she agrees. While lying on the sand, Elise notices Paul checking out two women. Later, she talks to him about her desire to study family law, and Paul encourages her to go for it. The group rides a carousel, and Sonia ignores calls from Pascal. Over the next few days, the couples continue enjoying their vacation. Meanwhile, Marcus helps Cecile finish packing. One afternoon, Louise sees Julian and Sonia kissing, heartbroken. A few days later, Elise picks up her daughter Nina from the train station after her ex-husband changes his plans. The next day, the child joins sailing classes and helps Paul lift a boat. Sonia admits she needs to end things with Julian, but instead spends time with the sailing instructor. Afterward, she mentions she's not using contraception, and Julian says he'd support her if she got pregnant. Later, Elise and Sonia notice Cecile's necklace, a gift from Marcus. She says she's going shopping, and Marcus joins her. At the boardwalk, they flirt while trying on accessories. Christine appears and gives Cecile the bracelet she secretly took from Michelle. Elise tells Paul he can visit after his job in Paris, but he seems uninterested. Sonia finds Cecile crying, and Cecile admits she's fallen for the sailing instructor but knows it won't work. The next day, the women go on a date. They bring Cecile breakfast in bed while preparing for a party. In town, they see Thomas with Louise, and Elise calls him a hypocrite. Julian says Paul is busy with a private lesson. Later, Marcus takes Cecile out on a boat to help her relax. They hear a noise outside and see Louise pouring trash on the car. Sonia insists she's imagining things, but Louise shocks them by relieving herself through the sunroof. Nina reminds them that they probably acted similarly when they were young. At the party, Elise sees Paul with another woman, and Julian tells Sonia he's glad she broke up with Pascal. Sonia explains it wasn't for him, but her age difference with Julian is still an issue. Heartbroken, Julian walks away. Meanwhile, Paul finds Elise, and they talk about their relationship. He admits he hurt her, and they share one last hug. Later, Elise overhears Christine scolding a man, and Sonia talks Julian down from a cliff. Cecile and Marcus tear down the wall in the backyard. Over breakfast, Cecile says she's not selling the house. Nina teases Marcus about staying in Cecile's room, and they all laugh. Later, the pelican leaves the bedroom, and Cecile waves goodbye.
Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the bell icon, and stay connected with us.